I still remember the sound of the lock turning because that was the moment I realized there was no easy way back. She stood between me and the door with a calm look on her face, one hand holding a navy dress, the other holding the only secret I had spent my whole life trying to hide. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look angry. She looked certain. And somehow that was worse. She lifted the dress a little higher, like she wasn't offering me fabric, but a choice. "You can keep pretending with the rest of the world," she said softly, "but not with me." I knew before you did. My throat went dry. My hands actually started shaking. Because out of everyone in my life, she was the one person I could never fool, the one woman who had memorized my silences better than other people memorized my words. And when she said she knew, I believed her. What I didn't know is that before the night was over, she would strip away every excuse I had ever built, every lie I had ever used, every layer of fear I had called dignity, and by the time I looked in the mirror again, I would not just see a different reflection. I would see the version of myself that had been waiting years to breathe. Her name was Lena, and she had known me since before I learned how to hide my eyes when certain things caught my attention. She knew the tiny pause in my voice when we passed a boutique window. She knew why I never laughed too loudly at the jokes other men made. She knew why I always volunteered to help her carry shopping bags but never quite made eye contact with the satin wrapped around the mannequins. We had been close for years, close enough for her to read the difference between my normal nervousness and the kind that comes from wanting something you have convinced yourself you should never want. I thought I was careful. I thought I was invisible. But women like Lena don't watch the obvious parts of a man. They watch the parts he doesn't know he's revealing. That night she had invited me over for what she called a normal dinner, and if I had known what she meant by normal, I never would have shown up. I was barely inside when she placed a small gift box on the table and asked me to open it. I smiled, thinking maybe it was a joke, maybe some cheap accessory from a trip, maybe a mug. But when I peeled back the paper, I found a pair of nude stockings folded so neatly they looked ceremonial. My chest tightened. I looked up too quickly, and she just watched me. Not mockingly, not sweetly, precisely. "You touched them like you already knew what they felt like," she said. That's when I decided I was done waiting for you to tell the truth. I denied it immediately, of course. I laughed too hard, used the wrong tone, reached for sarcasm like it could save me. I told her she was imagining things. I told her she was being dramatic. I told her they were just stockings. Then she walked to her bedroom, came back with my gym bag, unzipped the side pocket, and pulled out the soft pink camisole I thought I had hidden there weeks ago after panic stuffing it away before meeting her for coffee. My entire body went cold. There are moments in life when you think your heart is breaking, but it's really your false self cracking under pressure. That was one of those moments. She didn't say a word for several seconds. She just let me see the evidence in her hands and let my own silence confess for me. "I found it by accident," she said. "Then I kept quiet because I wanted to see if you trusted me enough to tell me. You didn't. So now I'm telling you something instead. You are not disgusting. You are not broken. You are terrified. And I am getting very tired of watching fear run your entire life." No one had ever spoken to me like that. Not with pity. Not with cruelty. With clarity. It disarmed me in a way anger never could. I sat down because my knees didn't feel dependable anymore. She moved more gently after that, but not softer. There was steel in her kindness, and I would learn later that this is exactly what I needed. Too much softness, and I would have escaped into shame again. Too much pressure, and I would have shut down. She gave me neither. She gave me truth with no place to run. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "Tonight," she said, setting the dress beside me, "you stop wondering what you would look like and you find out." I told her I couldn't. She asked why. I said because it was stupid. She asked if that was the real reason. I said because I'd look ridiculous. She said everyone looks ridiculous the first time they become honest. I said because I wouldn't know what to do. She smiled at that, the smallest, sharpest smile, and said, "That is the first true thing you've said all evening. You don't know. So let me teach you." That word hit me harder than anything else. Teach. Not expose. Not humiliate.
Teach.
Suddenly the room felt different. This wasn't a trap. It was an opening, and openings are frightening when you've lived inside yourself like a locked room. Still, fear doesn't disappear because hope shows up. I stood there frozen while she laid out everything with terrifying calm. The stockings, shapewear, a simple bra with inserts, the navy dress, a cardigan, low heels, a makeup bag, a brush, remover wipes, perfume. Not flashy. Not cartoonish. Not some exaggerated fantasy. She had chosen things that would let me look elegant, understated, believable. That detail broke me more than if she had turned it into a joke.
She had thought about this.
She had imagined me in these things not as a punchline, but as a person. I tried one last defense. I asked her how long she had been planning it. She said, "Since the day I caught you staring at your reflection in my hallway mirror while wearing my scarf when you thought I'd left the room. You weren't playing. You were searching." I remembered that moment instantly. I also remembered the heat in my face when I thought no one had seen. But she had seen. She had seen me years before I was brave enough to see myself. When she handed me the stockings, I almost dropped them. My fingers were clumsy, my breathing uneven. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "First lesson," she said, "don't fight the fabric.
Slow down.
If you rush because you're nervous, you'll tear it, and then you'll think the problem is you. The problem will be that you were panicking." It sounds small now, but in that moment it felt profound.
Slow down.
Don't fight the fabric. That was about more than stockings. That was about all of it. I disappeared into her bathroom and stared at myself under the harsh, white light. I thought maybe if I waited long enough, courage would arrive like a switch flipping. It didn't. What came instead was exhaustion. I was tired of being at war with a part of myself that refused to die. So I sat down, rolled the stockings carefully, and did exactly what she said.
Slow.
Gentle. Patient. And when the fabric slid into place, my breath caught. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Real has a way of quieting the noise. I touched my leg and felt smoothness where there had always been tension. For the first time that night, I didn't feel stupid. I felt attentive, present, curious. When I stepped out, Lena didn't clap or grin or make me self-conscious. She just nodded once, like a teacher seeing a student finally stop flinching. "Good," she said. "Now stand up straight. Second lesson. If you wear something feminine while apologizing with your posture, you will hate every reflection you see. Shoulders down. Neck long. Let the clothes sit on you. Don't shrink to make other people comfortable." That changed the entire way I held myself. I had spent so many years making myself smaller emotionally that I didn't realize I had started doing it physically too. The shapewear was humbling. The bra was terrifying. The dress was the turning point I can still feel in my skin. When she zipped it up behind me, the sound seemed louder than it should have been. I looked at myself and immediately reached for flaws.
My jaw.
My hands. My shoulders. The shape of my face. She stopped me before I could spiral. "Third lesson," she said, moving beside me at the mirror. "Do not judge the whole picture while it's unfinished. No one looks complete halfway through." That line stayed with me because it applied to everything. I had been condemning incomplete versions of myself my entire life. Then she sat me down in front of her vanity and began the part one feared most. Makeup. Up close. No escape. She tucked my hair back and studied my face not like a critic, but like an artist assessing balance. "I'm not here to turn you into someone else," she said. "I'm here to show you what softness looks like on a face that has only ever been taught hardness." My chest tightened again, but this time not from fear, from recognition. She started with skin. Moisturizer first. Primer. Color correction around the beard shadow. Foundation in thin layers. "Fourth lesson," she said while blending. "More product doesn't make you more feminine. Better placement does." Most beginners try to hide themselves under makeup. That never works. You shape, you balance, you refine. I listened to every word like it was survival information because in a way it was. She showed me how shadow and light can redirect attention, How brows alter expression, how blush placement changes energy, how lip color can either fight the face or complete it. It wasn't magic. It was method. That was the first time femininity stopped feeling like an impossible secret language and started feeling like a craft I could learn. Halfway through, I made the mistake of glancing in the mirror too soon and panicked. The unfinished face looked unfamiliar in the worst way. I said I looked absurd. I said we should stop. I even stood up. That was the moment she did something I never expected. She took my chin gently in her hand, looked right into my eyes, and said, "If you quit at the exact moment discomfort appears, then discomfort will own you forever. Sit back down." I wish I could say I obeyed, because I was brave. I obeyed because she sounded like someone speaking from a place beyond argument, and a part of me knew she was right. That was turning point 5. The moment I learned not to confuse transition with failure. When she finished the eyes, everything changed. Soft brown shadow, liner close to the lash line, mascara a little shimmer. Suddenly my expression had story in it, not costume.
Story.
I looked like someone who had spent years not speaking and might finally be ready to. Lena stepped back, tilted her head, and for the first time all night, she smiled with unmistakable warmth.
"There you are," she said.
"No one warns you that being seen can feel more dangerous than being hidden." I looked at myself and felt tears rising before I even understood why. Because I wasn't seeing a fantasy. I was seeing permission. I was seeing evidence that the part of me I had mocked in private was not ridiculous, not automatically doomed, not beyond reach. And that was the 6th turning point. I stopped asking whether this side of me was real and started asking whether I was finally ready to respect it. But Lena was not finished. "We're going out," she said. I laughed because I thought she had to be joking. She wasn't. My heartbeat turned violent. I told her absolutely not. I said I could barely handle seeing myself in a mirror, let alone being seen by strangers. She crossed her arms and leaned against the dresser. "You think the mirror is the hard part," she said. "It isn't. The hard part is letting the world stay ordinary while you refuse to disappear inside it." I said people would stare. She said maybe. I said someone would know. She said maybe. I said I wasn't ready. And that was when she gave me the 7th lesson, the one that changed me long after that night ended. Ready is not a feeling that arrives before courage. Ready is what you become after you do the scary thing and survive it. We compromised, if you can call it that. Not a crowded restaurant. Not some impossible public test. Just a late-night drive and coffee from a quiet place across town where no one knew us. It still felt impossible. She helped me into the cardigan, handed me a small bag with lipstick and powder, and then came the shoes. Low heels, manageable, elegant. 8th lesson, she said as I wobbled immediately. Don't walk like you're trying to escape the shoes. Shorter steps. Let your hips move naturally, not theatrically. Balance comes from rhythm, not force. Even in terror, I almost laughed. My entire life, I had imagined femininity as something people either possessed or didn't. She kept showing me it had texture, technique, discipline. The walk from her apartment to the car felt longer than any distance I had ever crossed. Every sound seemed amplified. Every porch light felt like interrogation. I was sure someone would appear from nowhere, point at me, laugh, expose me. No one did. The night remained night. A passing car passed. A dog barked in the distance. Somewhere a television flickered behind a curtain. The world did not explode because I finally stopped lying to myself. That was turning point 8. Sometimes the revolution happens inside you, while everything outside remains completely still. In the passenger seat, I kept checking the mirror, then looking away, then checking again. Lena drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting lightly near the gearshift, like she knew I was one panic attack away from telling her to turn back. 9th lesson, she said quietly as we waited at a red light. Stop trying to decide if you pass every second. Passing is not the only goal. Presence matters. Composure matters. The more you chase perfection, the more obvious your fear becomes. That one hit deep because perfectionism had always been my favorite disguise for self-hatred. If I couldn't do it perfectly, I could pretend I was choosing not to do it at all. She was dismantling that excuse in real time. At the coffee shop, a young woman at the counter smiled and asked what she could get for us. Just that. Nothing dramatic. No double take. No scene. My voice trembled when I answered, but I answered. And when she handed me my drink and said, "Here you go," with the same polite tone she used for every other customer, something inside me shifted so suddenly I almost forgot to breathe. It wasn't about validation from a stranger. It was about the collapse of a lifelong prophecy. I had believed visibility would destroy me. Instead, visibility simply happened, and I remained intact. Turning point 9. We sat in the car afterward, parked under a street lamp, coffee warming our hands. I should have felt relief, but what I felt was grief. It came out of nowhere, heavy and immediate. Lena noticed before I could hide it. "What is it?" she asked. I stared at the lid of my cup and finally said the thing I had never said aloud to anyone. "I think I lost years to fear." Saying it made my voice crack, because suddenly I could see it all so clearly. The chances I never took, the nights I spent alone bargaining with myself, the shame that stole not just experiences, but entire versions of my personality. Lena didn't interrupt. She let me grieve it. Then she gave me turning point 10. "Maybe," she said. "But don't insult the years you survived by only calling them wasted. They brought you here. Now decide whether this becomes your first honest night or just your favorite secret." That sentence followed me home like a challenge. Back at her apartment, I thought maybe the night would end with tea and soft conversation. Lena had one final surprise. She placed her phone face down on the bed, looked at me through the mirror, and asked, "Do you want a picture?" I froze again. A picture made it real in a new, permanent way. A reflection disappears when you move. A photo stays. I said no immediately. Then I stared at myself one more time, at the careful makeup, the cardigan hanging just right, the dress that no longer felt foreign, the expression on my face that looked vulnerable but alive, and I heard myself say, "Take one." That was turning point 11. Not because of the photo itself, but because of what it meant. I was choosing documentation over denial. I was allowing proof to exist. She took 3 pictures. In the first, I looked stiff. In the second, uncertain. In the third, she said, "Stop trying to pose like the old version of you is still watching," and something loosened in my shoulders. The third picture became the first image of myself I ever kept instead of deleting. Not because it was flawless, because it was true. Then Lena sat on the edge of the bed and asked the question that mattered more than all the others. "What do you want to be called when you feel like this?" No one had ever asked me that. Not who I was pretending to be. Not what name would sound amusing. "What do you want to be called?" I thought my answer would take forever, but it came almost instantly, like it had been waiting behind my teeth. "Elise," I whispered. Lena smiled, and without hesitation, she said, "You look beautiful, Elise." I broke completely after that. Quiet tears, shaking hands, all the emotion I had trained myself to swallow for years. Because turning point 12 was not the dress, not the makeup, not the public outing, not even the photo. It was being addressed as someone I recognized before I had learned how to introduce her. We stayed up talking for hours after that. The conversation moved past appearance and into the deeper parts one had always avoided. Why I felt this way. When it began. What scared me most. What I actually wanted. Lena listened, but she also corrected me when I drifted back into shame. When I called it pathetic, she asked who taught me that word. When I called it wrong, she asked wrong according to whom. When I said I wished I were simpler, she said human beings are not puzzles to be flattened just because complexity makes other people uncomfortable. Before I changed out of the dress, she gave me a final set of lessons I have never forgotten. She told me that good feminization is not about piling on signals until you look exaggerated. It is about coherence. Hair, posture, voice, styling, mood, silhouette, pacing, all speaking the same language. She told me to build looks around one focal point instead of trying to make every element dramatic. She told me neutral tones are not boring when the fit is right. She told me fragrance matters because how you feel often begins before you even look in the mirror. She told me hands become more elegant when they relax. She told me confidence grows faster in private practice than in public panic. She told me if I ever wanted this part of myself to become beautiful, I had to stop treating it like contraband. Most of all, she told me something I think every person wrestling with this side of themselves needs to hear. Do not build your femininity entirely out of what excites you in the moment, she said. Build some of it out of what sustains you after the moment passes. Anyone can chase a thrill. Learn how to create a self. That line changed how I approached everything afterward. I stopped asking only what looked sexy and started asking what felt right, what expressed me, what I could inhabit for hours without feeling fake. That is when crossdressing stopped being only a hidden urge and started becoming a language of self-understanding. When I finally changed back into my usual clothes, I expected the old numbness to return. It didn't. Something had shifted too far to be pushed back into silence. Lena packed the dress, the stockings, the bra, the makeup basics, and the heels into a bag and set it in my hands. I told her I couldn't take them. She said, "Yes, you can. The only question is whether you'll keep waiting for permission from people who don't know you, or whether you'll accept the permission you already have." I took the bag. The next week I practiced alone. Badly at first. My eyeliner was uneven. My walk was overthought. My lipstick choices were terrible. I learned exactly how much difference brow shaping can make. I learned that foundation oxidation is real and cruel if you pick the wrong shade. I learned that the right neckline can soften the whole look more than extra makeup ever could. I learned to steam dresses instead of wearing them straight from the bag. I learned to sit properly, to move without bracing, to let stillness be feminine too. Each small mistake taught me more than fantasy ever had. And every now and then, when I caught myself getting frustrated, I heard Lena's voice in my head.
Slow down. Don't fight the fabric.
Don't judge the whole picture while it's unfinished. Quit confusing discomfort with failure. Stop trying to pose like fear deserves a vote. Those lessons were not just style advice. They were survival tools. Months later, I asked her why she chose that night. Why she finally forced the truth into the open after years of seeing it. She took a moment before answering. Then she said, "Because I could tell the hiding was starting to hurt you more than the risk of honesty." I didn't argue, because she was right. There is a point where secrecy stops protecting you and starts consuming you. I had crossed that point long before she locked the door and held up that dress. So if you're listening to me right now and you know exactly what I mean, if you have ever paused too long in front of a mirror, if you have ever touched fabric like it might answer a question you were too scared to ask out loud, if you have ever thought maybe you were the only one carrying this ache, let me tell you what I wish someone had told me years earlier. The desire does not disappear just because you insult it. Shame does not become wisdom simply because you repeat it for long enough. And fear is a terrible stylist. It will dress you in invisibility and call it safety until you forget your own outline. The woman who knew me best did not feminize me by turning me into a fantasy. She feminized me by refusing to let me hide behind lies. She taught me that elegance begins with honesty, that femininity can be learned, that softness is not weakness, and that the mirror becomes less frightening the moment you stop asking it to approve of you and start asking it to reflect you. I still have that third picture. The one where my shoulders finally dropped and my eyes stopped apologizing. Sometimes I look at it not because it was the prettiest I've ever looked, but because it was the first time I looked like someone arriving instead of someone escaping. And whenever I think about that night, I come back to the same truth. The lock turning at the start didn't trap me. It freed me, because the real prison had never been her apartment. It had been the life I built around never being seen. And the woman who knew me best didn't ruin my secret. She rescued me from it.